this, just so you know, this meeting is being recorded. Okay. So I just wanted to go back and I wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page because I feel like we didn't get very far. All right. I also wanted to do some Punnett square examples because I am going to be giving you some Punnett square homework to do. And I was going to give it to you last week and I decided not to because it looked like you guys were brain dead. And I want you to actually retain the material, learn the material. So we're going to do it this week instead.
Oh my God, I have to thank you so much.
For what?
Oh my God, no homework last week.
Well, you guys did have an exam and it was a rough exam. And to be perfectly honest, it gave me more time to grade your exams, which I wouldn't really have been able to get done if I was also trying to grade your homework. So, all right. So we talked about this a little bit. Somebody attempt to remind me what complete dominance was. Complete dominance. Not all at once though, it's overwhelming. Okay. So we talked about the difference between a dominant and a recessive allele, right? So when you have a dominant allele, if you have a copy of that dominant allele, that means the dominant trait, whatever it is going to show through, right? So even if you have one copy of the dominant and one copy of the recessive, the dominant trait is going to come through. That is what complete dominance means. It means that the dominant allele masks or covers up the recessive one. And the example that we talked about was coat color, right? So remember we talked about coat color being expressed with, we used B was the letter, right? So if we had an uppercase, that stood for black. And if we had a lowercase b, that was red, right? And we just decided this. That was our label, right? We could have also done, uppercase C could have been black for coat color, and then lowercase c could have been red. We could have done anything we wanted to do, right? But we chose uppercase B was black, lowercase b was red, right? So in the case of complete dominance, remember we took a red cow, so she would have been lowercase b, and then we took a black bull, and then we made babies, right? So we wound up with this. So each one of these squares is a baby, a potential baby from this mating, right? So what did we wind up with 100% of the time as far as the combination of alleles? We wound up with uppercase B, lowercase b, all of them, 100% of them, right? Were uppercase B, lowercase b. So are these animals homozygous? Are they heterozygous? What are they? Heterozygous, right? Because they're different. There's one copy of the dominant and there's one copy of the recessive. So all of these babies are heterozygous. Now, is there a heterozygous dominant or a heterozygous recessive? How does that work? Would it? trick question. There is no dominant or recessive because there's one of each. All right, so there's no heterozygous dominant, there's no heterozygous recessive, they're just heterozygous. They're different. That's all. Okay, what about this bull over here? Is he heterozygous? Is he homozygous? What is he? He's homozygous. Is he dominant or recessive? Dominant. Why? Because they're capitalized. So he's got two copies of the dominant allele, right? So that means that he is dominant because he's got two copies. What about the cow? She's up here. Is she homozygous? Is she heterozygous?
The B, the lowercase b and lowercase b, that is homozygous.
Very good. She's homozygous recessive. Homozygous meaning the same. She has two of the same, and they are the recessive copy. Does that make sense? So homozygous means they're the same. They have two copies of the same one. And then you look and see, are they capital or lowercase? If they're capital, they're dominant. If they're lowercase, they're recessive. So, in the case of all four of these babies, or 100% of these matings, what would the babies look like? They all have
babies.
all four of them. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
All four of those are black.
They're black. Why?
Because you have the heterozygous,
Yep. Heterozygous. Good.
which is a dominant with a recessive.
Yes. And in the case of complete dominance, like I told you that this coat color is a completely dominant trait. So that means that when you have an animal that's heterozygous, like these babies are with this combination, that means these babies will always be heterozygous and they will always be what color? Black. Because they have one copy of that black allele, and because it's completely dominant, that's all they need is the one copy of the black allele. Now, what if I changed it up on you a little bit?
I guess my thing is, I'm just a little confused what we're doing with four squares.
Okay, let's backtrack. It's a fair question. If you have the question, more people probably have the question and are asking. Okay.
I know that.
This square right here is a Punnett square. You can actually draw it. I'm just not very good at straight lines, so it actually looks like this, like a window kind of. Okay. And what we're doing here is we're trying to test out what the potential offspring will look like. So essentially, each of these is a quarter, for 25% chance. Okay? And what you can do is you can put the parent here. So parent A, and then you put a parent down here. Do you need help with that?
Yeah, sorry. It's like, yes, right. We're just gonna let you stand here.
Okay, so you have parents. All right, so in the case of the example that I just did, I generally put the female up here. You don't have to, but you put one parent per side. Okay, so I told you that we had a bull, and he was uppercase B, right? So that made him black, right? So what you do is you put one of their alleles here and one of their alleles here.
And that's if we knew it.
If we knew it. And I've given, in this case, I've given it to you, okay?
Yeah.
So we had uppercase B. So when we breed him to the female, we're going to enter in his information in each of these boxes. Okay, so we would automatically have because he's contributing to this quarter, he's contributing an uppercase B. And in his case, he's always contributing an uppercase B, right? So 100% of his babies will get an uppercase B. Okay, so then we have the cow. And I told you she was what color?
Red.
She was red, right? And if she is red, because this is a completely dominant trait, what does her genetic code have to be?
R or lowercase.
Yeah, lowercase b, because she's red. So she can't have any of the uppercase copies, right? So she looks like this, lowercase b, lowercase b. So I take one of her lowercase b's and I put it in this column, and I put the other one here. Because, why? Why do we only put one here and one here? So why do we put one B here and one B here? Why don't we just put them both here?
Oh, because you're putting it up, the chances of.
You're right.
I can't explain it.
You're on the right track.
Yeah.
So when you inherit things from your parents, or when a parent passes on genetic material to an offspring, are they passing along both copies of theirs? No, they're only passing on one, right? So he could pass on this one, or he could pass on this one. And in his case, they're both the same. Will they always be the same? No, right? So we put one here and one here because they're only passing along one at a time. All right, and so same thing with the cow. So she's going to contribute here. So all we're doing is we're matching up what the parents are contributing. Does that make sense? More sense? Okay, so in this case, all of the babies will inherit the same thing because both parents are homozygous. Right? He is homozygous dominant, she's homozygous recessive. We good? Does that help? Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to change it up on you. Okay, what if we had a bull who looked like this? So is that bull still black? No. If I changed him, if I gave him one lowercase b,
He could be black, but he's carrying he could be black or red.
so he has one lowercase b. Does he have two? No, he has one. So what color, based on this complete dominance idea, will he be? He will be black. But he's a carrier for red, right? So if we took this bull and we bred him to this cow, half the time he would pass on an uppercase B, right? And half the time he would pass on a lowercase b. Does that make sense? So this is all from the bull so far. And if we took this black bull and we bred him to the black or the red cow, she would always pass on the lowercase b, right? So these two babies at the top are the same, right? So half of them will be this uppercase b, lowercase b. What color would they turn out? Black. Very good. So this one is black. This one is black. What about these ones down here? They're going to be red. So half the time, this bull bred to this cow will throw red calves. And then the other half of the time, he'll throw black calves. Are they carriers for red? Yes, they are. This is one of the ways that colors can skip generations. Right? What if, changing it up again, oh no. What if I change the cow? What if the cow is now uppercase B, lowercase b. What color will she be? She'll be black. Very good. And now we have a difference in the babies, right? So what are we going to get from Dad? Dad's the same. So what are we going to get here from Dad? Uppercase B, both times, right? What are we going to get from Dad down here? Lowercase b. All right, lowercase b. What are we going to get from Mom here? Uppercase b. Good. What about here? Lowercase b. What about here? Uppercase b and lowercase b. Now, what color are these babies? What color is this one? Black. What about this one? Black. This one? Black. It's black because there's still a copy. And I usually always put the uppercase first, regardless, but I was trying to make it easier to follow. So this one is black. And what about this one? This one is red. So if each of these is a quarter, what percentage of the time are we going to get red? 25% of the time, right? 75% of the time, we're going to get a black calf. But half of the time, those black calves will be carriers for red. Does that make sense? It's a little confusing, right? That's why I'm going to have you practice. It doesn't sound confusing at first, but there are layers, like an onion, right? Okay. So are we good with complete dominance? Because now we're going to move on to the next layer, and it's going to get a little nice. Is it a little easier to follow than last week?
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Let's talk about incomplete dominance. Incomplete dominance. So, some of those calves that we had, they were uppercase B, lowercase b, right? And in the case of complete dominance, those calves would have been black. But we do have some genetic traits that when you take the homozygous dominant individual and you breed it to the homozygous recessive individual, the resulting heterozygous babies don't make the dominant color. They make a mixture between the dominant and the recessive trait. All right? The example that we use here is actually flowers, snapdragons. Those are some of my favorite flowers. And if you take a white flowered plant and you cross-pollinate it with a red flowered plant, you will get a pink plant. Back to like kindergarten where you learn colors, right? Red and white make pink. Okay, we're good? All right, cool. So this gets confusing because we have the red plant is uppercase R, uppercase R. All right, that's the red plant. And then lowercase r is the white plant. Okay, so far? So our heterozygous individual, heterozygous means what?
Different.
Different. That means they have one copy of the dominant and one copy of the recessive, right? So our heterozygous individual is pink. Okay, so if I was going to take the recessive plant and I was going to breed it to the dominant plant, 100% of the time, I would get this genetic combination. All right, an uppercase R from the red plant, a lowercase r from the white plant, every single time. So what would 100% of these babies look like? Pink baby flowers. All right. Now, what if I took one of these plants and I bred it back to the red plant? So, looks something like this. Now, we're going to get these. What color are these going to be? Red? What about these? Pink still, but probably a redder shade of pink than before. All right, because we're talking about diluting colors now. It's not just red to black makes black or red to red makes red. Does that make sense? Okay. This is different than our codominance, which we'll talk about. If we talk about coat colors, red and white doesn't make pink, right? I think I said that last time. We don't make pink cows. Not a thing, but it does get mixed up, so I have to say it. Like, we don't have pink cows. So there are genes in animals that work this way. They blend a mixture of traits together. Coat color is not one of those traits, okay? So we don't make pink cows. I mean, it would be cool, but we don't do it. All right? Does this make sense? Because it gets a little confusing. We've got like 4 or 5 different layers that we can apply here, and they start to kind of sound the same. So I want to make sure. Incomplete dominance means that neither one of the traits are truly dominant in a heterozygous individual. Does that make sense? They blend together. So you don't see more of one or more of the other. They evenly blend together. Make sense? All right. Okay. Codominance. We talked about this one last time a little bit. I really like the idea of codominance because I really like the roan color pattern in animals. I think it's beautiful. So codominance means that the heterozygous individual, so the result of 2 homozygous pairings, means that this homozygous individual expresses a completely new pattern. Okay, so in the case of the roan animals, you have a white animal and a red animal, and you breed them together and you get a speckled animal. Okay, so it's solid, solid, speckled. That's the new color pattern. And it gets confusing because when you look at roan animals, this kind of looks like a mixture of red and white, right? So you might get them mixed up with the incomplete dominance. Codominance is a form of incomplete dominance. But again, we're not mixing red and white cows to make pink cows. We're mixing a solid, and making a speckle. Does that make sense? You can do it in chickens too. We talked about the chickens. Somebody was like, I have chickens. I think it was Hannah. Has chickens. She's no. But yes, I'm pretty sure it was Hannah. So you're taking 2 very distinct color patterns and making a completely new pattern. That's the difference. We're not blending red and white to make pink. We're blending solid and making stuff. Okay, so if we had this and we were talking about cattle, and we took a red bull and we bred him to a white cow, we would get all of these little heterozygous calves 100% of the time. So, what color would these little heterozygous calves be? Roan. That's that speckly color pattern. That's what it's called, roan. Sometimes they come in like a bluish color. They come in a black roan. There's a silvery roan. There's different variants of the roan color pattern, but that color pattern is very distinct. All right. So that is codominance. Codominance, and it's a form of incomplete dominance. So they're very similar. It sounds like we're splitting hairs here. Are we okay? Yes? Okay, great. Okay, we talked about test crossing already. So I'm gonna kind of skip over that one so we can get to the sex-linked inheritance. Remember, we talked about using a Punnett square as a test to see potentially what we could get and to see how we could predict our genetic makeup. Remember talking about that? Yeah, okay, cool. Okay, so I really want to talk more about this sex-linked inheritance, okay? Because we get to talk about calico cats, and I really like talking about calico cats. So remember how we talked about sex chromosomes? What were the sex chromosomes? X and Y, very good. So if you are female, genetically female, what do you look like? Yes, very good. XX. Genetically female. All right, and if you are genetically male, you are XY, right? So there are some traits that are located on either the X or the Y chromosome. All right, and we call those sex-linked traits. So in the case of the calico cat, calico cats are 99% of the time female. You know that? Fun fact. They are female because they need 2 copies of the calico gene in order to express the calico code pattern. Everybody knows what I'm talking about, calico cats, right? They're pretty. No? Oh, that's tragic. Hold on, let me help you out.
Now I know why. And orange cats,
And orange cats also contribute to the calico cat pattern, so you are correct. All right, let me help you out here. Calico cats, all right? They can come in like this tortoiseshell color, they can come in the calico-y color, but if they have this kind of mixed color coat pattern like this, 99% of the time, they are female cats. And that is because that calico gene is located on the X chromosome, and you need 2 copies of it for it to be activated. So you have to be a female in order to be a calico. That's a very good question. How are there male calicos? Yeah, they're a mutation. There are some mutations that look like this, XXY. So they inherit 1 extra X chromosome.
what does that look like? What do they have?
No, but most of the time they are sterile.
Okay.
Yeah, so genetically they are a mix. Often they come out looking male, but they're most often sterile. So I think I mentioned that the default sex is female, right? I mentioned that last time. And the presence of this Y chromosome, there's a gene, 1 gene on that chromosome is called the SRY gene, and that starts to transition the entire body towards male. So even though this individual had 2 X chromosomes, the presence of that Y gene started the process towards maleness, but couldn't completely change over to male because of the presence of the 2 X chromosomes. Does that make sense? So they're kind of fighting each other for control. So most likely a male that looks like this, and this can happen in people as well, although in people most of the time they look like female. But but internally they'll have a mixture of male and female genitalia. But most of the time they tend to look, not always, but okay. So in the animals, they will tend to look more male. They won't develop a hormonal surge center like females have. They'll start to develop male gonads, but they'll generally be incomplete. But male, yes, male calico. That's the only way that can happen. So if you have a male calico, it's pretty rare.
So there's no possible way of making male calico and
I'm not going to say it's impossible because obviously weird things happen all the time. Majority of the time these animals are sick because they have an extra copy of a chromosome that doesn't have a pair. Does that make sense? There's 3 instead of 4. If there were 4, they would be a little bit better off. But one of these chromosomes doesn't have a partner to pair off. Huh? You can. It's even more unusual. Most of those individuals die.
When you have like both
No, most of the time they still look like that male.
So this is kind of off topic. Do you know how some people are born with like both?
That is called hermaphrodism, and it is absolutely a genetic mutation, or not necessarily mutation, but a genetic anomaly. It depends. Some of them are triple X. Some of them are XXY. Some of them, these are the most common ones. Some of them have a partial X and a Y. It depends. There's a lot of different conditions. Most of the time it's either double XY or triple X. If you have triple X, they look like females, and they're sterile females. The ones that you get a mixture of both tend to be losers because you have a copy of that Y gene in there. And so that Y gene, again, starts the development of the male gonads, but the female gonads are also trying to develop at the same time. So usually you get to a point where they both just stop. So there could be, ones that look like physically look a little bit more female. She might have a vulva and part of a vagina. She might have partially developed ovaries and also maybe internally testicular tissue. She might have developing mammary tissue, maybe not. So a lot of these individuals also have other medical problems that go along with the hermaphrodism. Most of the time, there's not just problems with the reproductive tissues, there's other problems. So I have a couple of pretty interesting videos that I could probably post on Canvas. If you guys are interested in those kind of, that always used to fascinate me when it still kind of does, but genetic anomalies and genetic issues used to always fascinate me. My mom was a nurse, so that kind of stuff always fascinates me.
Hopefully we don't get too off topic, but like with cats, like I've always wondered, because honestly, until I became a cat owner, I didn't know cats had breeds.
Cats had what? Oh, breeds?
Yeah. Or
that's fair. Most of the time you're like American Shorthair. Like that's it.
Yeah, right? I'm like, it's a barn cat or a cat.
Yeah.
So with all of these dominant and everything, like with this calico, so would she hold the main? So what would her hers look like?
Okay, let's talk about that. So we've established that in order to be a calico, you have to be a female, right?
Yeah.
And you have to be a female because you have to have two copies of the calico gene. And I'm going to distinguish that with the little check mark, okay? So if you have this, 2 copies of your X chromosomes, and each of your X chromosomes has the calico gene, that means that you are a calico cat, not a Jalico cat. This isn't Andrew Lloyd Webber. Nobody. These are the jokes, guys. I don't have anything, brother. Okay. So if you are 2 copies of the X calico gene, you are calico. So if you look like this, are you a calico?
Yeah.
You are not. Are you a carrier? You are a carrier. So you are a carrier.
Can she have babies that don't look like a calico?
She can. A calico cat can have babies that don't look calico, and a carrier can have babies that are either calico or not calico.
Who doesn't even have anything?
Well, cats can also be sired by multiple sires, so cats are cats, right? Cats. Okay, so let's talk about males, male cats. Okay, so we've established males are XY, right? So male cats can also be carriers. All right, because females, they pass along their X chromosome, right? So if a female cat has a male baby, that means that she either passed along this one or this one, right? But one of them. So if she is a calico, all of her male offspring will be carriers. Does that make sense? Because she has 2 copies of the calico gene, one on each X chromosome. So she's always going to pass on that gene to her sons and daughters. All right, so all of her sons will be carriers. Does that mean that they are calicos? No, unless they are mutations, in which case maybe. That's like super unusual. Doesn't happen all that often. Actually, it seems like it happens more often because of how many babies cats have and how many cats there are. So statistically speaking, it's rare, but you do see it. Okay, so carriers. All right, will the female carriers always have carrier sons? Let me say that again. If you have a female who's not a calico but a carrier, will her sons always be carriers or no? They will not. How come? You are right. You're correct. She will not always have carrier sons because she has one copy that has the calico gene and one copy that does not. She could pass along either of these to her son. So half the time, her sons will be carriers, yes. Does that make sense? Do you want to do an example? I like examples. Okay, all right, let's do a female calico. And we're going to breed her to a male carrier. Male carrier. Thank you. Pretty laugh. I got it. All right. All right, a male carrier. Okay, so we're going to breed her to a male who's not a calico but carries the gene. All right, so will this baby, this first baby, will this one be a male or a female? Female. How can you tell? XX. Will she be a calico?
Yes.
She will, because she's getting the calico gene from her mom and her dad. So she's going to be a female, and she's going to be a calico. C-A-L, calico. What about this baby? Same thing, female and a calico. What about this baby? He's going to be male, XY. Is he going to be a carrier? He will, because he's getting this X from his mom, right? So he's going to be male, and he's going to be a carrier, C-A-R, carrier. All right, what about this one? Male carrier, very good. Does that make sense? All right, now, what would happen if we changed it? Because change is good. Okay, so what if we did this? We're breeding a carrier female to a male. Is he a carrier? He's not. What would this first baby look like? Male or female? Female. Is she a calico? She's a carrier. Okay, so she is not calico, but she carries it. What about this baby, male or female? Female. Is she a calico? Is she a carrier? So she's just female. All right. What about this one? Male. Is he a carrier? He is. What about this one? Male. And this one is a male. Oh, whoa, I'm just all over the board. Okay. Male, XY. Is he a carrier? No, he's just a male. Just. Does that make sense? Okay. It's easy to get these mixed up. I usually distinguish, so in some of your homework questions and when we do a quiz over this, I might ask you to come up with your own letter designation. So I might say you're breeding a female calico to a male calico carrier. Set up a Punnett square and show me what the babies will look like. All right, so I don't tell you this is what designates a carrier or a calico, okay? So what you have to remember with the sex-linked inheritance is that you always need an XY chromosome because that distinguishes male versus female. And then within that, you have to distinguish which ones are calicos or carriers. Okay, you can do that a lot of different ways. So you always have to have this. But to distinguish, you could put a check mark here. You could put a little C down here if you wanted to. You could do whatever you want. But what you can't do is this versus this alone. Does that make sense? You have to have the XY in front of it. Because what I will probably ask you with the sex-linked inheritance is you're breeding a calico cat to a carrier male. How many of those offspring will be male? How many will be female? And what color, like how many will be calicos and how many will be carriers? That's typically the question I ask. Okay? So don't forget that you have to have the X and Y chromosomes in there somewhere. And then within that, you can distinguish which ones are carrying the calico gene or not. Does that make sense? Are you okay with that one? All right, cool. We're going to stop there.
And what do you call that square?
Punnett square.
What?
Punnett square.
We? Sorry.
That's all right. If you've never heard the term before, Punnett square. There are a couple schools of thought on how to spell it. This is the school of thought that I buy into.
Yeah, because if I don't see it, I might not.
Okay, so we're gonna stop there. And whoop, 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 screen has stopped. Things are freaking out. All right, we're gonna stop there. I'm gonna stop the recording.